Hello my friends, and welcome to this next video in this series where we shall continue our discussion on the document object model. We have already talked a lot about the document object model and we've been able to do a few manipulations. In this video, let us do even further manipulations based on the parent-child relationship that those elements or node in the DOM share. And we're also going to see how we can write the cleaner code. On the left here is my Visual Studio Code, and on the right is my browser. And you can see as soon as I hover around this click me, this text size increases. And that's because we have this change font size function right here on the button. So we're listening for on mouse enter. So that's why anytime the mouse hovers around, then this text increases. And for this paragraph, we also have a change background function. And what does it do? When we click on it, it's going to change the background color of this paragraph. Now you can see I just clicked and the background changes. And that same on-click is also added to this button. So if I were to refresh and then click on this button, the background color also changes. So what I'm going to do is to remove this event right here, the on-click event on this paragraph, and also remove this on mouse enter right here, and also remove the on click that is on the button. So I'm going to remove everything and just have a much more cleaner HTML code. Now those events, we're going to have it written inside of our scripting.js file so that we have our HTML code clean and nice. So if I were to implement that same function, I'm going to go inside of my scripting.js file. And you can see we just have two functions right here. Now, how do we listen for events? In this case, the on-click event or action on this button. How do we do it? Because remember, before we would come here to the button and say on-click, right? But I don't want that to be the case anymore. So I want to listen for an event, the on-click event specifically on the button. So what I can do is come to the scripting.js file. And then I'm going to grab that button right here. So remember how to think in terms of programming when you want to do something on the DOM. First of all, we can catch the button, right? So how do we do that? We can say document.getElement by ID. And I'm supposing that this button has an ID. Well, it doesn't have an ID, so I can give it an ID. So I can say ID of btn, like so. And I'm going to save. So now I'm going to say get element by ID btn, and then I'm going to store it inside of a variable. So I'm going to say let btn equals document.getElement by ID btn. And remember, you can name your variable whatever you want. I just want to use this btn variable. Now, after grabbing off the button from the HTML page, the next thing is to add an event listener. Oh yes, there is a function called addEventListener, which helps you to listen for an event on a particular HTML element. So I'm going to say btn.addEventListener, and this is the function right here that we can use. This addEventListener function can take on some arguments, and one of the arguments that we provide to the addEventListener function is that event or action that we want to listen for on the button. In this case, we want to listen for the click event. And mind you, when we are inside of our home.html file, we can say on click, right? So we can say something like on click, and we can say something like on mouse enter, on mouse leave, and so on and so forth. And these are events that can actually happen, right? But if we're working within our JavaScript code, some of the names of those actions or events actually change. So for example, the on click is no longer on click, rather it becomes click. So you can see that as soon as I type this quotation marks and try to find on click, there is nothing like on click. Rather, you have click. You can see right here we have click. And there are other events or actions that we can also have right here. So it is good that we're using VS Code because VS Code can easily suggest to us correctly some of those events that we can have. And then you can just look at them and then choose the one that suits you. In this case, we're going to go with the click event. And this click right here is just one of the arguments that we can provide. The second argument that we're going to provide to this addEventListener function is actually a function itself. So the function that should run when there is a click on this button. So I'm going to write a fat arrow function right here, and inside of this function I'm going to have the things that should happen when this button is clicked on. So what are the things that should actually happen? I'm going to actually grab this paragraph right here. So I think I have it somewhere here. Yeah, you can use document.querySelector-p. So let me copy this, and right here I'm going to paste it. So I'm going to say document.querySelector-p dot star, and then dot background color will be gray, and I'm going to save. So this is what we have. We grabbed off the button from our home.html file, and we're listening for an event on that button. In this case, the click event. And we're using the addEventListener function to listen for that event. That's what the function does. And then as an argument, we provide click, which is the event that we want to listen for. And we also provide a function that should run when that click happens on the button. In this case, I want this paragraph's background color to change from what it is now to gray. So when I save, and also save my home.html file, now as soon as I come here and click, you can see that this learning is fun changes to gray, the background color, right? So we don't have to come to this button and say on click, on mouse enter, and so on and so forth. So this is a much more efficient or cleaner way, at least in my opinion, of working with the DOM. Now the next thing we want to do is make this page a little bit lively. You can see that it is just having a bunch of text. Now let's say we want to add some images to this web page. How do we do it? And we want to do it dynamically. That means we don't just want to come to the home.html file and then import an image right here and then use an image right here using the image tag. No, we don't want to do this like this. We want to do it dynamically. That means when the code is already running. Okay, and we can do it right here instead of our JavaScript. And to be able to do that, I'm going to first of all delete everything that we have here so that we can focus more on adding an image to our web page. And we're going to do that based off the parent-child relationship that this page has. So when I save this, and if I click, nothing is going to happen, right? Because I've already removed these functions from my scripting.js file. Now what we want to do, I actually want to add an image right here to my web page. So what we're going to do is to create an element. So we can also create elements using JavaScript, right? Right here in our home.html file, we can use the p tag, h1 tag to bring in elements, right? We can also do that using JavaScript. How do we do that? We say document.createElement, and we're going to provide the element that we want to create. In this case, we want to create an image element or an image tag, right? So I'm going to say rmj. And I'm going to store this inside of a variable. So I'm going to say let image equals document.createElement rmj. So right now we've created this image right here. So what we can do now is put this image somewhere within our HTML page. I want to put it inside of the body, right? So we're also going to grab the body. So I'm going to say let body1 equals document.getElement by ID body1 or body2 or whatever you want to name your body. Now let me see if I actually give this body an ID. Okay, yes, it's having a class of body1, but let me also give it an ID of body1. Let me go back, and yeah, correct. So what we want to do now is put this image inside of the body, right? So how are we going to do that? I'll come on the next line. I'm going to say body1 dot appenchild, and then I'm going to say image like this. So what are we doing here? Remember, this body is a parent, and we want to put a child inside of the body. So this is the code that we can use to do that. Now let me save, and oh no, we can't see any image right here on our web page, right? And why is that so? That's because we've not provided the src attribute for this image. Remember, images, when you have them on your web page, they're supposed to take on an src attribute, right? So if I were to write an image directly here, you can say image, and you can see it has this src and alt attribute. And this src attribute helps the browser to know where the image is located, right? So I'm going to take this one off again and save and come back to our scripting.js file. So it means that we need to give this image that we've created an src attribute. So how do we do that? We can use image.setAttribute. So in this case, what attribute do we want to set? We want to set the src attribute. And then what's the value? We're going to give the value of /, and then we're going to provide the image. Currently, inside of our file explorer right here, we don't have any image. Now, I downloaded an image that is right here on my desktop. So I'm going to take this image right here and drag it here. You can also copy the image and paste it right here, whatever works for you. Now, this image is having a long name. I can rename it right here in my VS Code. I'm going to rename it as picture.webp. All right, so we have this image right here. So I'm now going to say / and then we'll have picture.webp. This has given the location of the image and is setting it as the value of the src attribute. So now let me save. And when I save, now you can see that the image comes under here. All right, it's a very huge image, and that's why we're scrolling all the way down. And that's how we can bring in image using JavaScript. Now you can see the code that I've used, .appenchild, and that means it wants to put this image as one of the children of the body tag. So that's why we use this appenchild right here. And this image is very big. We can also set some width attributes or height attributes in order to resize this image, right? Now I can also say image.setAttribute, and then I'm going to say width. So I'm going to set the width attribute, and what do I want to give it? I can say something like 400 pixels. Okay, now the width is 400 pixels, and I'm also going to set the height. I'm going to say image.setAttribute and also set the height. Then I'm going to say height. Height should be around, let's say 400 pixels. Should be in strings. Now you can see the image is now a bit smaller, but I think it's still a lot larger. So I'm going to make this 200 pixels instead and make this one 100 pixels. And you can see that the image has become smaller. Sometimes instead of using the set attribute like this, we can just say image.height like this and set it equals to whatever value you want to have. So let's say 100 pixel. In this case, we don't necessarily need the pixels, the px right there. So if we save, we have the same thing. If we make it 40, you can see it becomes a lot smaller. If we make it 200, it increases again. So this is how we can set attributes on this image or any element for that matter. You can use the set attribute, and I think it is much more intuitive because you're setting the attribute of width and then you're giving a value. So, but if you want, you can also use this method, just image.the attribute and then you give it the value. But I prefer this other method, the one that says set attribute of width and then giving the value. So let me bring that again. Let me copy this one and then paste right here and change this one to height. So we set our heights one more time. Yeah, and this is what we have. Now, if you look closely, you will see that the image is the last thing here. It went to the last part of the page. The button is side by side with the image because both of them are inline level elements. So they're kind of on the same line. All right, but it's actually the last thing inside of this HTML web page. And you can see that if I try to inspect element and then click on body, now you can see that image is right here and the button is here. You can see that image right here is the last thing. It came after the button. So sometimes we want to put an element before some other element. Let's say we want to put this element before the heading that we have here, this learning JavaScript heading. How do we do that? So we can say body1.insert before. So we want to use the insert before function to actually place this image in a particular location. for this insert before, we're going to provide some arguments. So the first argument is the element that we want to insert. In this case, we want to insert the image element, and then we want to insert it before which one? Let's say we want to insert it before this learning JavaScript. So where is learning JavaScript? This is learning JavaScript, and it's having the ID of heading 1. So I can just say document.getElement by ID of heading 1. Now when I save, you see that the image moves up just before the learning JavaScript right here. So that's how we can actually create elements dynamically and put it anywhere that we want to put it, right? And you can see how we've done it using the appenchild and insert before function. So I'm going to take things back to what it was before. Okay, and save. So the image comes back right here. Now that we have this right here, how do we remove a child that exists within a parent? We've seen how to create an element and put it inside of a parent. Now what about removing a particular child? Let's say we want to remove this learning JavaScript right here. I can say something like body1.removeChild right here. And what child do I want to remove? I want to remove this heading, so I can just say document.getElement by ID and heading 1. So as soon as I save, you see that this heading is going to disappear. So you can see the heading is no longer there, and that's because I've removed it and I used removeChild. Now if you look closely, you can see that we're having child here and we're having child here. So this is based off on the parent-child relationship. If this heading, the heading that we have right here, is not within the body, then it's not going to work, because that means the heading is not a child of the body, and so we can't remove it. So we've seen how to actually create an element like we did for this image and set all the attributes that we want to set for that element, and then we've seen how to put that element inside of a particular element. So if, for example, we also have a div right here, let's say we have a div just after the learning phone, I'm going to create a div right here, and I'm going to give it an ID of div1. Now let's say I want to append this image instead of the div1, instead of putting it anywhere. Now I can come to my scripting.js file and actually capture that div, right? That's the first thing we do. So what I can do is actually copy this code, or actually delete all of this one and create a variable of div1. So I'm going to say let div1 equals document.getElement by ID div1, like this. So I'm now going to put this image right inside of the div1, and I'm going to say div1 dot appenchild. I'm going to say image. I'm going to save. Okay, now I did not save my HTML file, so that's why the image is not showing. So I need to save this one too. And as soon as I save, you can see now the image is right here, and this image will be inside of the div1 parent. Now if we try to inspect, so I'm going to inspect element, and let me drag this up a bit and click on here, and you can see we have a div1 right here, and instead of div you're having a image, this image right here. So you can see, and that's why we have the image at this position, because the div is just right here and it comes before the learning is fun and I love to learn. So definitely we're going to see the image right here before learning is fun and I love to learn. So that, my friend, is how we can actually manipulate the content of our HTML page based off the parent-child relationship. In this case, we've been able to work with the body as a parent. We've also been able to work with the div as a parent and add children into it, or a child, in this case the image, inside of that parent. And we can also remove that child, right? So if I come right here and say div1.removeChild, and then I'm going to say image and save, now you can see that the image is gone because I've removed it. So this is how we can work with the DOM based off the parent-child relationship. And that's it basically, my friends, for the document object model. I'm sure by now you've already understood how to create elements using JavaScript, how to append it to some other elements as a parent, and how to remove the child and do some other simple manipulations. There are a whole lot of other functions or other things that we can do with the DOM depending on your use case. And as we go on in this JavaScript Masterclass series, we're going to be using the DOM more and more, and we're going to be seeing some other functions and some other manipulations that we're going to be doing. But this basically will give you a good and solid understanding of what the DOM is about and how to do just about anything with the DOM. So see you in the next video.